My name is Elena, I'm 34. And that night I discovered my brother had left my 9-year-old daughter in the care of the woman he never called anything more than a casual fling. If you've ever faced something like this, comment where you're reading from. The first thing that hit me was the silence of the apartment. Too still, too clean. The kitchen smelled faintly of dish soap and the overhead light buzzed like an angry insect. I set down my keys and picked up my phone from the counter. A new message blinked on the screen. Dropped her at S's. Back later. The timestamp said 1842. My chest tightened. S. That was all he ever called her. No name, no respect, just a letter. I remembered the way he once laughed, saying she was not family material, just someone he called when he felt like it. And yet, he thought it was acceptable to leave my child with her. The mug I'd used that morning was still by the sink. Rim stained with coffee, ceramic cool under my fingertips. I gripped it without meaning to, as though the weight could steady me. I called him. Once. Twice. Straight to voicemail. The third time he answered, background noise of some crowded bar spilling through. His voice was slurred, dismissive. Relax, she's fine. Then he hung up. My daughter should have been at home. Her homework folder zipped inside the green backpack that leaned against the hallway wall. Instead, she was across town with someone my brother himself didn't trust to be seen within daylight. The air in the kitchen felt heavier by the second. I stood still, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator, my pulse hammering against the ceramic mug. The mismatch between his careless words and the gravity of what he'd done carved a line inside me. I didn't know yet that in 72 hours, that mug would be sitting on a lawyer's desk, beside a printed page that would make my brother's face pale for the first time in years. The next evening the confrontation broke open in my living room. The clock above the bookshelf glowed 20:57 in calm blue numbers, but nothing felt calm. My brother had just dropped my daughter off and collapsed onto the couch as if he owned the place. The room smelled faintly of cinnamon. Her half-eaten oatmeal cookie still on a plate beside the lamp. She had run off to her room, leaving her small sneakers by the door. My eyes kept drifting to them. Size 2, the laces tied unevenly, proof of how young she still was. I stood between him and the television. You don't get to do that again, I said. My voice was even but my palms were damp. He flicked the remote, soundless highlights of a soccer match flashing across the screen. Do what? You left her with that woman. The one you've told me a dozen times is just casual. The one you wouldn't even introduce to mother. Finally, he looked up, his expression flat, eyes red at the edges. It was 2 hours. She watched a cartoon with her. Stop acting like it's a crime. 2 hours. 120 minutes in a stranger's hands. My throat tightened. I remembered his own words a week ago when he'd smirked. She's not someone I'd ever take seriously. And yet my child was there, as if she were an errand he could outsource. I leaned on the back of the armchair, the rough fabric scratching my fingertips. This isn't about you. It's about her safety. If you don't respect that, then you don't respect me. He scoffed, stretching his legs out, the heel of his shoe thudding against the coffee table. You're overreacting. You should be grateful I help at all. Help. That word landed heavy, like an insult wrapped in a favor. Leaving my daughter with someone he didn't trust was not help. It was negligence. I crossed the room and picked up her cookie plate, crumbs scattering against the polished wood. This was the last time, I said steady. Don't test me on this. For the first time he didn't answer right away. The blue numbers on the clock clicked to 2100 hours. The silence felt like a thin crack in a wall that had never bent before. And in that pause, something inside me began to harden. I would not let him rewrite what safety meant for my daughter. It wasn't the first time my brother had treated boundaries like optional guidelines. Looking back, there were small scenes scattered through the years like breadcrumbs leading me here. I remembered one winter evening when my daughter was 3. He was supposed to pick us up from the clinic after her vaccination. He promised. I stood outside in the icy wind at 1910, phone pressed to my ear, while he laughed somewhere in traffic saying, I lost track of time. She shivered against my coat, cheeks flushed, her little mitten slipping from her hand onto the slush. I forgave him because it was easier than starting a war. Then there was the summer barbecue at our mother's house. He disappeared for 90 minutes, leaving me alone with a dozen restless kids, claiming later he just stepped out for a quick drink. The smell of charcoal and ketchup had clung to my hair as I juggled plates and crying toddlers. Again I let it slide. Even money had its shadows. When my daughter turned 7, I opened a small savings account in her name. 10,000 rubles to start, a token for the future. I later discovered he'd convinced our mother to borrow from it. Just a few hundred, he said. But the statement showed 3,800 missing. It took me weeks to untangle, and his shrug still echoes. It's family, it's nothing. Piece by piece, a picture formed. He thrived on being the charming uncle, the one who could show up late with pizza boxes and win easy smiles. But when it came to responsibility, commitment, structure, trust, he vanished like smoke. And what's at stake isn't abstract anymore. It's not just my patience, not just the comfort of holidays or the smoothness of family dinners. It's my daughter's safety, her sense of who is solid and who is not. If she grows up thinking this is normal, that promises are fragile and care is negotiable, then I've failed her. I poured myself a glass of water that night, the kitchen dark except for the fridge light. My reflection in the window looked sharper than I felt, lips pressed tight. I set the glass down, listening to the faint clink on the counter, and thought, no more breadcrumbs. I didn't know then that the next proof would arrive not through stories or memories, but in black text on a printed page, the kind that doesn't let you argue it away. The evidence arrived almost by accident. On a rainy Tuesday, I stopped by our mother's house to collect a parcel that had been delivered there. While I waited in the narrow hallway that smelled faintly of damp wool coats, I noticed a folded sheet left on the shoe cabinet. Printer paper, edges still warm to the touch, as if it had just come from the machine. Curiosity wasn't my plan, but the first line caught me. A chat transcript. His name at the top, her replies below. My stomach tightened. I read enough to feel my pulse spike. You know I don't see you as family stuff. Her reply. Then why leave her here? Because I trust you for a night, not for a life. Don't overthink. The words blurred slightly as the dampness from my fingers spread across the page. It wasn't just carelessness, it was confession. He admitted he never respected her, yet still chose her as the person to watch my daughter. I slid the paper back exactly where I'd found it, though my hand shook. But the phrases wouldn't leave my head. Not for a life. Don't overthink. In the living room, the old wall clock ticked heavily, the sound amplified by my focus. I pulled my phone from my pocket and snapped 2 quick photos, the shutter almost too loud in the stillness. My thumb left a faint print on the screen protector, and for a moment I simply stared at it, as if evidence could burn. I folded my arms across my chest, the knit of my sweater rough against my skin. In my mind I heard his voice, the way he always dismissed me. Relax. She's fine. And here was proof that he knew the risk and chose convenience anyway. The choice crystallized in me like cold metal. I would not confront him with shouts. I would confront him with facts. This page, these words would not vanish into family air. I slipped the parcel under my arm and walked out into the rain, the damp smell of asphalt rising sharp around me. Each drop on my jacket felt like punctuation. I had crossed from suspicion into certainty. I make a choice. The next morning I booked an appointment with a lawyer our neighbor had once recommended. His office was on the 4th floor of a brick building downtown, a place that smelled faintly of paper dust and old coffee. I sat in the waiting room tracing the edge of a business card I'd pulled from the reception desk. The clock above the filing cabinets read 10:34. When I was called in, he gestured me toward a chair across from his desk stacked with folders. The blinds let in a thin line of September sun, making stripes across the floor. I laid my phone on the table, the screenshots open, the printout of my brother's chat with that woman. I expected him to shrug, to tell me it wasn't his concern. Instead he leaned forward. Do you know your brother is listed as a co-signer on your daughter's savings account? The words landed heavier than I anticipated. No, that can't be right. He pulled a document from his drawer. A client authorization form I had signed years ago when opening the account. I remembered rushing that day, my daughter tugging at my sleeve, my brother insisting he'd handle the details. There it was in black ink. His name beneath mine. Technically, the lawyer said, tapping the page with his pen, he has the right to withdraw funds. It's rare they use it, but the bank wouldn't block him. My stomach turned cold. That account had grown to 184,600 rubles, carefully saved over 7 years. College money, a future buffer. And my brother, who thought it acceptable to leave her with a woman he disrespected, could touch it without asking. The lawyer's voice was steady. If you want to secure it, you'll need to file a modification request by the end of the month. That's September 30th. After that, it gets much harder to change the terms. I glanced at the pen he had set beside the folder, the metallic clip reflecting light. My fingers itched to pick it up to start signing. The air in the office felt dry, almost brittle. I took a slow breath, tasting faint coffee on my tongue from earlier. So if he wanted, I asked quietly, he could drain the account tomorrow? He nodded once. Yes. I looked at the screenshots on my phone again at those words. Not for a life. The proof wasn't only about trust with my daughter. It was about money too, her money. I left the office with the business card pressed flat in my pocket, its edges sharp against the fabric. I knew now. This wasn't just about carelessness. It was about control, and it was time to take it back. The lawyer called me 2 days later, his voice measured but direct. If you're ready, we can file a formal request to remove your brother as co-signer. I'll prepare the letter. That afternoon I sat at my kitchen table, paper spread out like cards in a game I hadn't asked to play. The smell of brewed black tea lingered in the air, steam curling from the mug beside me. My daughter's crayons were still scattered across the surface, violet, green, a stub of red worn down to half its size. The lawyer had emailed me the draft. It was short, no more than a page, but the language was steel. Request to amend custodial account authority. Effective immediately. Revoke rights of secondary signatory brother's name. My role was simple: sign, scan, and send it back. I printed the page, the machine humming low in the corner. When I lifted it, the paper was warm against my fingertips. I read it once more, then uncapped my pen. The sound of the nib scratching across the signature line was louder than I expected, like a door shutting. 3 steps followed. 1. I signed the form, folded it into the envelope the lawyer provided, and sealed it with a strip of tape. 2. I walked it to the post office on Lenina Street, the cold wind biting my face as if urging me forward. The clerk stamped it with the date, September 27, 1542. 3. I texted the lawyer a photo of the receipt. He replied within minutes. Received. Filing tomorrow morning. He'll be notified. That evening I canceled the online access my brother had to the account. 1 click on the bank's portal. My hands trembled slightly on the keyboard, but when the confirmation email arrived, the tension in my chest eased for the first time in days. The quiet shock came not from me, but from him. At 22:11 my phone buzzed. A message. Why the hell did I just get a letter from the bank? I set the phone down beside my cooling mug of tea. The words glowed on the screen, sharp against the dark. For once he wasn't laughing, wasn't dismissing. He was blindsided. I didn't reply. Instead, I slid the mug closer, inhaled the faint bitterness, and let the silence answer for me. The consequences showed themselves almost immediately. 2 days after the letter was filed, my brother appeared at my door unannounced. The hallway smelled of wet leaves. He'd tracked some in on his shoes. His face was tight, not drunk this time but raw with anger. You went behind my back, he said. His voice was low but the words cracked like glass. I held the doorframe with one hand, the wood cool against my palm. My daughter's laughter floated faintly from her room, a reminder of what was at stake. It wasn't behind your back, I answered. It was in front of her future. He shoved a folded notice toward me. It was the official confirmation from the bank. His name struck off, mine standing alone. The ink was crisp, the header dated October 1, 2023. You think you can just erase me? I think I can protect her, I said evenly. My other hand rested on the small keychain in my pocket, a silver star my daughter had given me last year. Its edges pressed into my skin like an anchor. For once he didn't have a comeback. He just paced, muttering about betrayal, about family loyalty. But the weight of the paper in his hand made it clear. This wasn't negotiable. That same week, the bank sent me the updated balance statement. 184,600 rubles untouched. I tucked it into a folder labeled Future, and locked it in the cabinet by my desk. The sound of the lock clicking shut was almost musical. At dinner one night, our mother asked gently why things felt tense. I placed my fork down on the edge of the plate, the smell of baked potatoes still rising warm. "Because I asked for respect," I said. "No more, no less." The shift was small but real. My brother stopped offering to help with pickups. He kept his distance, text shorter, tone-edged. But in that space I felt relief. My daughter's evenings were predictable again. Homework at the kitchen table, cocoa warming on the stove, her giggles carrying down the hallway at 20:15 sharp. One night she looked up from her math book and asked, "Why doesn't he take me out anymore?" I brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "Because I take care of you. That's my job." And that was enough. A small win, but a win nonetheless. The second piece of truth came from an unexpected corner. Our building's entryway camera. One evening, the doorman waved me over as I returned from the market, plastic bags cutting into my fingers. "You should see this," he said, pointing to the monitor. The screen showed a recording from the previous Friday, timestamp September 29th, 1906. My brother, clearly agitated, stood outside with that same woman. I watched the grainy footage. She crossed her arms, her lips moving fast. He leaned toward her, jabbing a finger in the air. The sound wasn't recorded, but their body language was unmistakable. Then, with a sharp gesture, he handed her a small envelope. She shook her head, pushed it back, then stormed away. He stuffed it into his jacket and walked off in the opposite direction. The doorman frowned. "He said he was picking up your daughter that night, but I never saw her with him." My breath tightened. He hadn't taken her, but he'd told me he was watching her. I thanked the doorman, asked for a copy. Minutes later, a USB stick slid into my pocket, its hard plastic pressing against the receipts from my groceries. When I confronted my brother, I didn't shout. I simply placed the USB on the table between us, beside the bowl of tangerines my daughter had left half peeled. "You lied again," I said. He leaned back, forcing a laugh. "You don't even know what that is. Maybe I was meeting a friend." I met his eyes. "I don't need to know what was in the envelope. I just need to know you weren't with her, my daughter, when you said you were." The silence stretched, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. His smirk faded, jaw tight. For once he had no script. He muttered something about me being too strict. That kids need freedom. But the evidence was there, visible, timed, undeniable. In that moment, clarity washed over me. There was no way back to how it had been. I could no longer trust him with my child, with her money, with our lives. I slid the USB into my pocket again, the plastic edge scraping against my hand. "This isn't a debate anymore," I said quietly. "This is the line." And for the first time I believed myself. The morning light streamed pale across the kitchen tiles, cool under my bare feet. The kettle hissed softly on the stove, filling the air with steam and the faint scent of black tea leaves. My daughter sat at the table, bent over her homework, her green pencil case open wide like a little treasure chest. Life feels quieter now. My brother no longer has a key to my apartment. I changed the locks last week, the locksmith's drill buzzing through the old metal at 1410. I didn't announce it, I just did it. If he wants to visit, he knocks. If he wants to see my daughter, it happens only when I'm present. The account is secure. The folder labeled Future rests in the locked cabinet, the bank's new statement tucked neatly inside. I open it sometimes just to see the numbers steady on the page, untouched. 184,600 rubles. It feels less like money and more like a promise, one I intend to keep. Our mother still tries to soften the edges, asking if things might return to normal. I answer gently but firmly. This is normal now. Because the old version, chaos, excuses, blurred lines, wasn't normal at all. I've drawn new boundaries that don't need to be shouted or explained. They exist in action. The signed legal papers, the changed locks, the calm refusal to hand over what's mine to guard. My brother has lost his leverage, and I no longer feel the need to convince him of anything. Some evenings, when the apartment is still, I pour tea into the same chipped mug I held that night, the one that steadied me when his text first came through. The ceramic is cool, familiar, grounding. I sip slowly, listening to my daughter humming in the other room, and realize that peace doesn't arrive like thunder. It settles in layers, quiet but immovable. In 3 months, I'll enroll her in a weekend art class she's been begging to try. In 6, I'll add more to that account. Small steps, deliberate. For now I choose calm. I choose her. I choose myself. And that is enough.